Hey, Salakia. I had to handle something real quick. But we left off on, we finished the bottom of verse 5, right? I was going to continue on to verse 6. So this is 2 Kings 17 and verse 6, right? And it reads, you see the caption there, Israel captive. In the 9th year of Hoshea the king of Assyria, took Samaria, all right, and carried Israel away into Assyria, and placed them in Halah, and in Habor by the river of Gozan, and in the cities of the Medes. So, going into what I was saying, we had always made covenants with the other nations. All right. Now, these things are happening after the split, okay, after the split of Solomon, because it talks about Samaria here. Well, Samaria is the northern kingdom, okay. And actually, I may pull this same verse in a different lesson. It'll probably be a short one to explain the 10 tribes, right? But the northern kingdom, or the king of Israel, also known as Samaria, was carried away into Assyria. And why? Why? Right? Because again, we made covenants with the other nations, and we did after their doing. We did after their customs and not our own. And see, that's the thing about our people. Anytime that the heathens come to us and say, oh, let us build with you, let us serve your power, or let us be among you, right? Whenever we have made those agreements or allowed them into the fold, what have they done? They've brought their gods with them, right? And eventually we start worshiping their gods and going off. So I'm gonna read down about 2 more verses, and it's pretty much gonna say that. Now again, this we were removed out of the land in these verses, but this explains to you why it was so. Verse 7. For so it was that the children of 2 Kings 17 and 7. And it reads, why Israel fell. For so it was that the children of Israel had sinned against the Lord Yahweh, their God, their power, which had brought them up out of the land of Egypt, from under the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and had feared other gods. Right? They feared other gods. And what is our very first commandment? Right? Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Right? Listen. Or beside me. Right? We can't even say, oh, well, this is our main deity. We worship this power. And then we also gonna worship this God over here on the side. The Lord wasn't going for it. All right. Much like the lesson I spoke on about previously regarding Moses in Exodus the 33rd chapter. Moses is speaking to the Lord, basically inquiring, and there's an exchange there, which basically Moses is vying for a monogamous relationship between the Most High, Yahweh, right? The source of everything, and the Israelites. Okay. Verse 8, here we go. And walked in the statutes of the heathen, right? We walked in the statutes of the heathen, whom the Lord Yahweh cast out from before the children of Israel, and of the kings of Israel, which they had made. right? And the children of Israel did secretly those things that were not right against the Lord their God. And they built them high places in all their cities, from the tower of the watchman to the fenced city. Those high places go into places of worship, okay, other altars and groves, all right, and pillars and obelisks and trees or whatever that they sanctified and made places of worship, okay. And again, today we see a very similar thing, although much of it is in ignorance, because Jake think that they're doing the right thing by serving JC, or whenever they fall into Islam, right? Thinking that, oh, Christianity is a white man's religion. We're gonna go be Muslims or whatever and worship Allah, not knowing, you know, Allah is a false deity as well. All right. And the problem is, people don't come to the scriptures, man. People don't go to the scriptures, and we allow these other nations to teach us the scriptures, right? And the scriptures themselves speak against that, saying, roughly paraphrase, where it says, what hast thou to do with to take my covenant in thy mouth? All right, speaking on the heathens. Okay, but we did these things secretly, man. Back in this time. Okay. Oh, that's what else I was gonna say. And so Jake, they'll worship the one of these monotheistic deities, right? JC, Allah, but then they'll turn around and they'll do Easter, right? Christmas, which all of those things are rolled into Christianity, because Christianity is like I won't say it's the king of like secrecy and smoke and bastardized religions, but it's up there. People go to Mardi Gras, they don't realize that they're worshiping the deity Dionysus, right? Or Bacchus, all right, the festival of Bacchus. That's what that, and you can find that here in the scriptures, man. The festival of Bacchus. That's a Greco-Roman custom. They speak on that in the Apocrypha. Okay. But again, the heathens know, man, that every chance they get to infiltrate and lead our people astray, they can accuse us. And they've been using the same playbook, the same blueprint for years. And not just the Edomites, all of the nations. This is why they make room for Jake to worship their deities. When Jake get into the martial arts and stuff, sometimes they take on those customs of the the Japanese or the Chinese or whomever, right? Burning incense to the ancestors and drawing on power. That's an African custom too, right? Honoring your ancestors. Look, you're supposed to honor the Heavenly Father and His only begotten Son, right? And I'm gonna tell you how wild it is. They'll say, especially in some of the Eastern, Asian philosophies, they understand the concept of reincarnation. But they'll tell you to honor your ancestors. So you honoring yourself, right? And self-worship, being a narcissist, or being a narcissist, That's against the Lord, man. You uplifting yourself as a power, as a deity, as a god. But you in these corruptible bodies that die and get sick, it's foolishness. But these other nations, they make room for you in Hinduism, right? Buddhism, Zoroastrianism. That's a real religion. Go look it up. That I believe that came in under the Iranians or the Persians. All right, and I mention that because we reading on those in that time period now. Okay, let's grab Psalms, the second chapter. Let's start at 1. And remember why I said, why do those other nations allow for this? Again, it's because they know, all of them, right? All of them know, especially those that come from the same, that are Shemites, right? And have some understandings of history and the blessings and the promises. Okay? And actually Esau would be the closest Shemite to us. That's why he hates us the most. More than any other nation. Then you'd have your Ishmaelites would be next. If varying degrees who hate us the worst or the most. Anyway, Psalms 2 and 1. Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? Right? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. Okay, verse 2, that word counsel again, right? Remember we read in Ezra, in the 4th chapter, that they hired counselors, right? Those the Persians, they hired counselors when we told them that they had nothing to do with building our temple, man. So not only do they hire people, but they themselves as a conglomerate take counsel, amongst each other, nation against nation. What do you think the United Nations is about? And how come we have no seat in the United Nations? Right? And if you want to get more specific, so it goes the UN, the United Nations, right, which is a conglomerate of nations, which include Edomites, Ishmaelites, Hamites. You know what? Let me grab this real quick. They confederate against us, right? Psalms 83 and 5. And 2. Right, Psalms 83 and 2. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones. Right? They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. Who? Verse 6, the tabernacles of Edom and the Ishmaelites, right? So the Edom is the so-called white folks. Ishmaelites, those would be the so-called Arabs. Of Moab, that's the so-called Chinese. The Hagarenes, right? Jabal and Ammon, right? Ammon are the Japanese. I believe the Hagarenes and Jabal are Hamites. Amalek, that's the chief house of Edom, all right? That's those small hats, the curly Q wearing small hats, the 1948ers, so you can understand the people that are over in our land currently claiming to be Jacob, and they're not. And the Philistines, right? The Philistines, the Palestinians. That word Palestine in the Hebrew is Philistine, and they come from Ham. So those are actually Africans by blood, right? With the inhabitants of Tyre, right? And look, and then it say what? Ashur also is joined with them, right? They have hope in the children of Lot. Selah, right? So, right, well, who are the children of Lot? The children of Lot are Moab and Ammon, okay? And Assyria, guess what? Assyria or Ashur, they're Shemites. They're Shemites, just like they come from Sham, just like Edom and Ishmael. Okay, but what? They are confederate against us. So that's the point. When we go back to Psalms 2, and it says, the kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. All right. So as I was going into all those nations I named, they all have a seat at the UN, the United Nations, all those classes of people. And then what happens is there's a smaller conglomerate that have inner dealings with each other on a more exclusive level called the EU, the European Union. Okay? And that EU has deceived the other outside nations like the Ishmaelites, the Hamites, the Moabites, the Ammonites, right? To think that they're going to get a piece of the pie when the people in the EU, those nations, have never really planned on sharing anything with these people. All right. And the EU is consistent of, well, so-called white people, Edomites. Right. But that's the point. All right. Because I done ran over. But yeah. This is why the Lord wants us separate from them, and every chance they get to mingle themselves amongst the body, amongst the people of our nation, they do what? They make room for us to go off, right? Because it said right here in verse 3, Psalms 2 and 3, it says, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. If I read that in the NLT, the New Living Translation, it says, let us break their chains, they cry, and free ourselves from slavery to God. Right? They want to free themselves from slavery to God. And see, the other nations understand that there's a pathway, there's an order. Because as heathens, they don't have direct access to the Heavenly Father. So their freedom from his bonds are what? Through us. If we would have kept the commandments, we would have all of these other nations, all these other groups of people in subjection as servants. And that's what the kingdom of heaven, all right, is all about. The rule of Yahweh Shai, all right, Yahweh Shai's kingdom under, through the house of David, right? Yahweh Shai sits at the helm at the top. Then David, right, and his descendants, the house of David, the 144,000 elect, and then the body of believers will establish the kingdom That innumerable multitude will establish the kingdom. And once all of the Israelites are born back into their lot and they receive their incorruptible bodies, we will reign forever in perpetuity. And the nations will be our servants forever in perpetuity. Perpetually, that's what that means. But on this side, again, they've done their due diligence. And the Lord has allowed them to, right? For his purpose. But again, we are the bonds that they're breaking off. So once they shed it tells you, right? In the blessing that Isaac gave Esau, right? When they shall break our yoke off their neck, what? They gonna come into power with the sword. And that's happened. Anyway, this will be Salaki for the interruption. This will be part 2 of a video since it's to run 20 minutes also. So, I will most likely entitle this No Covenant with the Heathen. All right, but anyway, I pray this lesson finds you well, and I pray that it was edifying. Until next time, Shalom.